The invisible leaks, why your power keeps disappearing even when you're aligned. You've been told that once you awaken, your energy will rise. That clarity will make you powerful. That purpose will make you unstoppable. But no one talks about what really happens after the awakening. No one talks about the drain, the depletion, the slow, unexplainable collapse of your energy field, even when you're doing everything right. You meditate, you journal, you eat clean, you speak your truth. And still you wake up some days feeling like someone plugged a siphon straight into your spirit and left it running all night. This is not random. This is not weakness. This is the initiation. Because every chosen one must pass through the 7 energy drain cycles not to survive them, but to transcend them. They are embedded into the fabric of your evolution. They are not obstacles. They are gateways. The first cycle is the cycle of overgiving. We don't start by being selfish. We start by being too available, too present, too open. We confuse service with sacrifice, love with leakage, and the world rewards us for it. They say, "You're so wise, you're so strong, you're so healing." But behind their praise is a silent expectation: keep bleeding for us. So we keep pouring, until one day there's nothing left to give. You're tired of holding space. You're tired of being the strong one. You're tired of offering wisdom while no one asks how you're doing. And yet you keep doing it. Why? Because somewhere deep in your system is a belief that your worth is tied to your output. That to be loved, you must be useful. That to be chosen, you must be selfless. But that isn't enlightenment. That's energetic enslavement. And the truth is, overgiving isn't generosity. It's a trauma response. You don't heal by giving more. You heal by learning to receive without guilt, speak without apologizing, and recharge without shame. The second cycle is the cycle of energetic echoing. You're not just drained by what you give. You're drained by what you absorb and amplify. As a chosen one, your field doesn't just feel, it echoes frequencies. You walk into a room and immediately start processing other people's unresolved energy as if it were your own. You don't realize it at first. You just feel tired, sad, anxious, and you assume it's yours. But it's not. It's residue. And because you're deeply empathic, deeply tuned, you become a mirror for collective shadows. But here's the trap. When you don't know how to return that energy to sender, you start building your life around frequencies that don't belong to you. You make decisions based on someone else's fear. You hold back your truth because of someone else's judgment. You shape-shift to avoid disrupting the field. But that's not your job. You are not here to harmonize to dysfunction. You are here to disrupt it with your coherence. And every time you choose comfort over clarity, you pay for it in energy. Every time you absorb instead of transmute, you leak power. Let me ask you this: how much of your current exhaustion is actually a byproduct of carrying energetic weight that was never yours to begin with? When was the last time you asked yourself, "Is this mine?" Before spiraling into fatigue? This cycle won't end until you reclaim the right to feel without fusing, to witness without absorbing, to love without leaking. The third drain cycle is the one most won't talk about. It's the cycle of identity inflation. It happens when you awaken, rise, and start stepping into your power, but your ego comes along for the ride. You create a new identity, the healer, the guide, the awakened one. And it feels good. Finally, you have language for your purpose. But slowly, without realizing it, your identity becomes a performance. You curate your light. You filter your darkness. You protect your image more than your essence. And this creates a chronic, low-level energy leak. Why? Because you're now managing perception instead of transmitting presence. You're speaking from role instead of resonance. And the gap between who you are and who you think you need to be widens. You don't feel safe being raw anymore. You don't feel safe being messy. You don't feel safe being human. And so you smile while depleted. You teach while dissociated. You love while empty. But the soul cannot thrive inside a performance. The chosen one path isn't about perfection. It's about authenticity, so raw it shatters every mask you thought you needed to survive. And this is where the real work begins. You don't need to fix your energy. You need to stop leaking it into false identities, outdated dynamics, and unconscious agreements. You don't need more protection spells. You need more discernment. Because your power isn't in your aura, it's in your alignment. And alignment means saying no when you're expected to say yes. It means walking away before you're drained. It means choosing solitude over shallow connection. And most of all, it means being honest with yourself when your soul is tired of performing for approval. So if you're feeling chronically drained, this isn't a flaw in your system. This is a message from your soul. It's saying, stop giving light to people who feed on your fire but never tend to your flame. It's saying, you weren't chosen to be consumed. You were chosen to transmit a frequency so clean, it collapses distortion just by existing. The soul contracts of collapse, how hidden agreements keep you drained even after you awaken. It's not enough to awaken. It's not enough to know your power, speak your truth, and walk in purpose. Because if you're still drained, you're still in bondage, not to people, not to systems, but to contracts invisible, ancient, unspoken agreements that your soul signed before your conscious mind could understand the cost. These agreements are not evil. They were born from survival, from loyalty, from love. But they are expired. And until you consciously revoke them, your energy will keep spiraling down, even as your awareness rises. The fourth cycle is the cycle of the unconscious contract. This is when your soul makes a vow without your mind realizing it. For example, I will carry the pain of my family so they don't have to. Or, if I shine too bright, I'll be abandoned, so I promise to dim. These are not just thoughts. These are frequencies. They become embedded in your field like spiritual malware, running in the background, draining you with every step forward. You wonder why you feel guilty for resting, why you sabotage your own momentum, why you can't hold on to abundance, even when it shows up. It's because there's a contract running underneath your consciousness, saying, I am only safe when I am small. You didn't choose this contract out of weakness. You chose it out of love. You were the empath, the anchor, the translator of dysfunction. You stepped into the chaos and said, I will be the bridge. But now, you're paying for a promise that's no longer aligned. And here's the deepest truth. You don't owe your past self your present energy. You can revoke the contract. You can say, I made that vow in fear. I now choose from truth. But first, you must see it. You must name it. You must ask yourself, what unspoken promises are still dictating how I show up, love, give, or stay silent? The fifth cycle is the cycle of field fracturing. This happens when you split your energy between too many timelines, too many identities, too many roles. You're the friend, the healer, the partner, the leader, the guide, the bridge, the translator. And in each space, you show a different version of yourself, not out of deception, but out of necessity. You're carrying 10 different masks, and each one pulls a piece of your energy. You're not just exhausted, you're fragmented. Your field is stretched so thin across the grid that you can't fully land in the now. You're in the past, protecting your inner child. You're in the future, holding a vision. You're in someone else's head, trying to make sure they don't feel too triggered by your truth. And none of you is in the present. So your energy leaks, not because you're doing too much, but because you're not whole where you stand. This is why you feel like you're always almost powerful, why your breakthroughs feel temporary, why your breakthroughs feel like breakdowns in disguise. Because your energy is being pulled in 6 directions, and you haven't yet declared which version of you is allowed to lead. The solution? Integration. You must stop trying to be everything for everyone. You must call your energy back from every timeline, every role, every version of you that was created to survive a moment that no longer exists. You must say, I am no longer available to fragment myself for the comfort of others. You must become one signal, one presence, one source of truth. And then there's the 6th cycle, the most seductive, the cycle of timeline entanglement. This happens when you stay connected to people, places, or possibilities that are no longer aligned because a part of you still believes you can fix them, heal them, or finish the story. You stay in relationships that drain you because you see their potential. You stay in communities that no longer resonate because you don't want to betray the past. You even stay in roles that exhaust you because you already invested too much time. But here's the truth. Energy doesn't flow to the past. It flows to truth. And the longer you stay entangled with expired timelines, the more your current timeline collapses. You don't just lose energy. You lose access to your own evolution. This is hard, I know. Because saying goodbye to a person is one thing. Saying goodbye to a timeline, to a vision you once held, to a future you once prayed for, is something else entirely. But that's what mastery demands. The ability to release the future you outgrew. The courage to say, I loved this version. I built this path. But now I walk alone until my next alignment arrives. Not because you're cold, but because you're finally clear. You don't owe anyone a seat in your future just because they had a chapter in your past. Let me ask you something radical. What if the next level of your power is being blocked not by your fears, but by your loyalty to a version of life that no longer matches your frequency? What if your fatigue is not from doing too much, but from staying too long in what you already outgrew? That's the real leak. That's the real code you must break. Because the chosen ones aren't just here to awaken. We're here to deconstruct the energetic systems that keep humans bound to suffering under the illusion of love. And sometimes love looks like letting go. Sometimes love looks like silence. Sometimes love looks like walking away from the very thing you thought you were sent to save. In the next part, we'll enter the final cycle, the most subtle and dangerous one of all. The loop that even the most awakened chosen ones fall into, the cycle of false purpose. We'll talk about how even your mission can drain you if it's built on the wrong foundation. We'll explore how service can become self-sabotage, and we'll unlock the secret to sustainable, sovereign energetic flow. The final trap, how the need to be useful keeps chosen ones powerless in performing. There's a final cycle, one that disguises itself as purpose, one that looks like service, smells like love, and even feels like destiny until you realize it's draining you just as much as the trauma ever did. It's the cycle of false purpose, and it's the most seductive trap a chosen one can fall into, because it doesn't feel like a trap. It feels like calling. It feels like mission. It feels like, this is why I'm here. But if you don't understand the difference between true purpose and adapted identity, you will build an entire life around a role you were never meant to play forever. And slowly, quietly, your light will dim. This cycle begins when we confuse being needed with being in alignment. When we confuse service with self-abandonment. When we mistake our usefulness for our worth. We say, I'll help them heal. I'll be the guide. I'll hold space. And at first we are. But then something shifts. We stop creating from overflow. We start creating to survive. We stop speaking from soul. We start speaking for validation. We stop choosing from truth. We start choosing from obligation. And suddenly, you're not a sovereign being anymore, you're a caretaker of other people's evolution. And your own energy is the payment. But here's the part no one wants to admit. Some of us became healers so we wouldn't have to face our own wounds. Some of us became teachers because it was easier than being seen in our vulnerability. We learned to perform purpose so well, we forgot who we were before the world applauded us for being useful. And now we don't know how to stop. Because if you're not holding space, who are you? If you're not guiding others, what value do you have? If no one is calling you light, master, wise one, healer, savior, will you still believe you're worthy of being here? That's the real test. Not whether you can serve, but whether you can stop serving when your soul says pause, whether you can log off, walk away, stay silent, be unseen, and still feel whole. Because if your purpose requires you to constantly perform in order to feel valuable, it is not purpose. It is a trauma-informed identity dressed in spiritual language. Ask yourself, what part of me is terrified of being useless? What part of me still believes that I only matter if I'm helping someone else? Why does rest make me feel guilty? Why does being anonymous feel like death? These are not surface-level questions. These are soul codes. They point directly to where your energy is still being siphoned by a false agreement with the world. You are not the world's savior. You are not its therapist. You are not its crutch. You are a frequency holder. You are a signal. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is deactivate the need to be needed. This is where true sovereignty begins, when your purpose is no longer a performance, when your mission is no longer a mask, when your essence can speak louder than your role. Because purpose is not a job. It's not a title. It's not something you do. It's a frequency you become. And when you become it fully, you are no longer drained by your output. You are fueled by your alignment. And yet, many of us stay in this cycle for years. We build businesses around it. We build communities around it. We build entire lives around a persona that was born the day we realized we were different. But eventually, that persona becomes a prison, and the cost of maintaining it is your life force. You're exhausted because you're acting, even if what you're doing is beautiful, even if it's helping people, even if it's successful. Because success is still a cage if it's built on self-abandonment. The key is to ask yourself, would I still be doing this if no one clapped? If no one watched? If no one paid? If no one followed? If the answer is no, you're not in purpose, you're in performance. And that's okay. That's human. But now you see it. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. So how do we shift? You stop. You pause. You re-enter your own body. You ask yourself, what do I want to do when no one is watching? What expression would still be sacred if it were never seen? You unplug from the algorithm. You unplug from the audience. You unplug from the identity that says I must give to be good. And you begin again. From nothing. From emptiness. From silence. This is the most terrifying thing a chosen one can do, because our safety has always been in our usefulness. But your soul didn't come here to be useful. Your soul came here to be true. And sometimes truth looks like not showing up. Sometimes truth sounds like I don't know. Sometimes truth feels like doing absolutely nothing for a while, until the real current returns. The one that doesn't drain you. The one that doesn't demand you perform. The one that feels like home. Because here's the highest truth. You are most powerful when you are most rested. You are most magnetic when you are most honest. You are most impactful when you are not trying to be. And when you walk in this level of alignment, your presence becomes the transmission. You don't need to teach. You don't need to prove. You don't need to post. You just are. And the world shifts around you. This is the final death. The death of the helper archetype. The death of the savior complex. The death of being the good one. And in its place, something new is born. Something quieter. Something deeper. Something more you than you've ever allowed yourself to be. In the last part, we'll bring it all together. We'll talk about what happens after you've broken the cycles. What it means to live in sustained energetic sovereignty. How to protect your field while still opening your heart. How to give without leaking. How to serve without performing. And how to walk through the world as a fully embodied chosen one, not because you're special, but because you are finally whole. Energy sovereignty, the final embodiment of a chosen one who no longer leaks, performs, or shrinks. So now here you are. The cycles have been named, the leaks identified, the contracts exposed, and the illusions dissolved. But what comes next? What happens when the performance ends, when the roles collapse, when the false timelines are released, and the stage lights turn off? You meet yourself, not the identity, not the title, not the healer or the helper, but the field that was always underneath it. That's where real energy begins, not from power over, not from effort, and not from the performance of purpose, but from energetic sovereignty. This is what the chosen ones are really here to embody. Because we're not here to be more spiritual. We're here to be less fragmented. We're not here to gain more tools. We're here to clear the distortions that keep blocking our raw, unfiltered frequency from flowing through the body like lightning. And once you've cleared the drain cycles, that current returns. At first, it feels unfamiliar. You're so used to effort, so used to proving, so used to overextending that stillness feels irresponsible and power feels heavy. But slowly you remember. You remember how to sit in your body without needing to justify your presence. You remember how to speak without trying to sound wise. You remember how to be seen without performing. And that's when the real energy comes back online. Because energy is not just what you give. Energy is what you are. It is your essence, your alignment, your coherence. When you are coherent inside, your aura becomes a fortress. You no longer attract chaos. You no longer feel drained by being around others. You no longer collapse into the needs and projections of people who haven't done the work. Instead, you hold your frequency like a tuning fork. You walk into a room and the field shifts not because you're trying to shift it, but because you are the shift. And this is the final phase, embodiment. Not knowledge, not insight, not even awakening, but fully integrated embodiment of your undistorted frequency in a human body, in real time, without shrinkage, leakage, or apology. But to live here, you must make new vows. You must vow to protect your energy, not just from others, but from yourself, from your old habits, from your identity loops, from the parts of you that still crave being needed. You must vow to choose yourself even when your programming says that's selfish. You must vow to rest without guilt, to speak without editing, to walk away without explaining, because your energy is sacred. And protecting it isn't a luxury, it's your assignment. You must also redefine service. Service is no longer about showing up from depletion. It's no longer about giving until empty. It's no longer about being the one who always understands. Real service is overflow. Real service is transmission from fullness. Real service is what happens when your own field becomes so filled with truth, it spills into the collective without effort. And this kind of service never drains, because it's not being pulled from your body, it's being poured from your essence. You also begin to live in what I call energetic minimalism. You stop engaging in noise. You stop explaining yourself. You stop consuming just to feel connected. You stop leaking energy into conversations that don't honor your time. You become radically selective about where your attention goes because you understand that your attention is your most powerful currency. You only pour where it pours back. You only speak where you are heard. You only show up where your presence is mirrored, not mined. And this isn't arrogance. This is sovereignty in practice. This is what we were never taught. Because we were raised to believe that goodness means giving, that value means usefulness, that visibility means worth. But none of that is real. What's real is your signal. What's real is your clarity. What's real is the frequency you hold in silence when no one is watching and no one is clapping. That's your power. That's your spiritual wealth. That's your true offering. So how does it feel to walk in the world after the cycles are broken? It feels lighter, quieter, sharper. You feel less drawn to noise, more drawn to space. You stop chasing intensity and start craving neutrality. Not because you're numb, but because you're no longer addicted to the drama that once defined your identity. You don't need chaos to feel alive. You don't need collapse to feel rebirth. You don't need attention to feel real. You are just here, present, whole, clear. You walk slower. You speak less. But when you do speak, your words land. You don't need to command the room. You become the room. You don't need to lead. You become the map. You don't need to save. You become the signal that reminds others they were never broken to begin with. This is the embodiment of a chosen one who no longer leaks, performs, or shrinks. You're not exhausted anymore, because exhaustion was the tax for living out of alignment. You're not confused anymore, because confusion was the fog of carrying everyone else's energy. You're not burned out anymore, because burnout was the natural result of false purpose and unconscious contracts. Now, you're sourced. You wake up and feel steady. Not high, not low, just steady. You make decisions that don't cost your nervous system. You create from frequency, not from fear. You serve not to be seen, but because your wholeness naturally overflows into the world. People feel you before you speak. They shift just by being near you. Not because you're doing anything, but because you're no longer leaking anything. Let me ask you now, at the end of this journey, what version of you are you finally ready to retire? What identity can you shed now, knowing it was built as a shield, not a truth? What if you never again said yes when your body says no? What if you never again gave energy from obligation? What if you never again betrayed your own clarity to be loved? Because that's what this path really is. Not the path of the perfect, not the path of the performer, but the path of the integrated. The one who has walked through fire, collapsed in the dark, risen without applause, and now moves through the world as a quiet storm of pure, clean presence. That's who you are. That's who you've always been. And now you remember. So walk in that, speak from that, choose from that. You don't need to prove anything anymore. You're already the proof. Let them feel you now. Let the world remember itself in your presence. You are not drained anymore. You are home.